The November 2013 cover story in Cardiol Source World News was called Extreme Makeover Clinical Trials Edition. Now, as I wrote then, clinical trials cost too much, recruit too few patients, and are causing too many investigators to just give up. So 3 years later, and there is a lot to talk about. In the October 25th issue of JACC, there is a review topic of the week, the changing landscape of randomized clinical trials in cardiovascular disease. And to talk about that, I'm with Dr. Schuyler Jones, who is an MD, Duke University and Duke Clinical Research Institute. And first off, congratulations. This is obviously a topic near and dear to my heart. Why did you want to do this paper? This is exciting.
Yeah, Rick, thanks for having me and to talk about this paper that we just published. The impetus for the paper really was as we kick off enrollment in the adaptable study. We're calling it the aspirin study that Pacornet has sponsored and is currently enrolling in the United States. We really think that this method of enrollment of patients and following patients is going to be used in the future and potentially pave the way for more trials that are pragmatic and can be performed and prevent all those things that you just said. Lower cost, more patient engagement, more physician engagement, and to answer questions that matter to patients and clinicians.
I mean, when I was writing that, I was just shocked at how many trials have to end early simply because there's lower enrollment because they just don't get people to enroll. It's too hard, too costly, and the investigators just go, oh, to heck with this.
Yeah. We were actually here in DC late this past week and for the kickoff meeting of Adaptable, and Bob Harrington, who was previously at Duke and now is at Stanford, is a study co-chairman, and he showed a slide about a couple of different prior clinical trials that really proved these points. One was Gusto. Right, so Gusto with Alteplase and showing that it can be done. I'll date myself, I was a young person then, and but 40,000 patients, a 3-page case report form, that is almost the definition of pragmatic. A long time ago, one of the first large studies. And then you see something like a cholesterol lowering trial that took 7 or 8 years to perform. By the time it was finished, it's almost out of date and obsolete. Yes. And you wonder, why did we do this? Yeah. Why did we spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and can't we answer questions that are important and valuable in our clinical practice and do it within the confines of what's already occurring?
So in this review, what are you discussing in terms of some examples of how this is going to work in the real world?
Yeah, I think the review really describes 2 processes. One is registry-based clinical trials, which have occurred. Safe PCI, the collaboration with ACC, the collaboration with NCDR and DCRI has occurred, very clearly was beneficial to both patients and to clinical trial.
That was what triggered that original cover story that I talked about, because it was so exciting to see something really new.
But it hasn't been done since. Why has it not been done since? And so then we're talking about true pragmatic trials as the second point. And a pragmatic trial is something that answers a simple question with simple questions that can be done in the context of clinical practice.
So tell me about your trial, the aspirin trial.
Yeah, the aspirin trial tests a very simple question, and Adrian Hernandez, who's a co-PI as well, says it's not very sexy. It's not a sexy question. And I disagree. I think we all need to know the answer to the aspirin question, 81 or 325, but it's in patients with coronary heart disease. And so, the idea is that we can prevent deaths, prevent bleeding if we know the right dose of a common medication. That medication is the basis of this drugstore conversation or decision that patients have when they pick up their meds every month. But we don't know the answer. And so it's being done within the infrastructure of Pacornet. So they have clinically driven research networks and patient-powered research networks all across the country to enter data both from a patient perspective on an internet portal, but also collecting data from administrative claims and clinical information within electronic health records.
And it's going to be economical and not all that difficult for the investigators?
So it will actually not involve a lot of investigator input. And in fact, as long as investigators are aware and believe in the question and believe in the reason to do the study, it's actually not a burden at all. When you ask about economical, when you look at some of these studies where sites are being paid $13,000 or $14,000 or $15,000 per patient per study for simple questions, this is about $600 to $800 per patient, right. And 20,000 patients over the course of probably 24 months of enrollment, and at least that for follow-up.
You brought up the fact, why hasn't it been done again? I mean, you've got people whose entire careers have been with the old classic randomized clinical trial, and you go back even generations, they've all been doing the same thing. Do you think that's part of it? This is so new. How do you get more people to think this way?
Yeah, I think that it was a speed bump. Many people didn't think they could get over that bump. And if you look at Bob Harrington, he's really made his career doing clinical trials, and right. He is the biggest cheerleader for this study. Adrian Hernandez, same way, Matt Rowe, the same way. And so we have engagement from ACC and AHA with Fred Masudi and Ellie and Antman. We're partnering with patients. We really think that this is the new way, the new paradigm to do clinical trials. And that's why we wrote the article, and that's why we're so passionate about it.
Well, and all those people you mentioned, they're all co-authors.
Yes.
So, I mean, this is really, that gives you an idea of how important this topic is.
It is. I think all of us really believe that this is a new way forward. We had a different title for the article that was changed, I would say, and that was the future of clinical trials. But the current landscape and the future landscape, I do think, involves a much more streamlined approach that occurs within clinical care delivery, and takes less input from clinicians, more input from other stakeholders like patients, and then we can actually answer these valuable questions.
See, I'm the executive editor of Cardiol Source World News, so I came up with Extreme Makeover Clinical Trials Edition.
Yeah.
It was a great looking cover. Go back and look at it. Yeah. And so I allowed myself to do that. I didn't change it.
Nice.
But first off, congratulations. You've got a great bunch of co-authors. It is a wonderful topic. Please, when you get any data or you want to share or just want to talk about this topic again, please come by, because this is a great topic that I love.
Well, I'll say every part of this trial is open source, and so everything that we have will be on the web, in front of people, in front of patients and clinicians. There will be feedback about and metrics for each of the trial sites or patients that are being enrolled, every type of patient. So we're really excited about it and think that this will be groundbreaking.
If this is something that someone wants to try in terms of developing a trial, is this a paper that they can learn from in order to help them develop the idea for a trial?
I think so. I think once you know the power of some of these research networks that are being created, if you know how to harness them, and some of the information is in the paper, not all of it obviously, because it's actually being developed as we speak. I actually have shown a slide that shows a ship being built as it's being sent to sea. Adrian uses the analogy of the airplane that's being built as they take off.
Right.
But it is effectively that. We're trying to learn how to do this as we kind of kick off this trial, and it can only get better.
Oh, I agree completely. This is the October 25th issue of JACC. Dr. Schuyler Jones and a bunch of really great people who put this together. Please look at it. It's the review topic of the week, the changing landscape of randomized clinical trials in cardiovascular disease. For Cardiol Source World News, I'm Executive Editor Rick McGuire.